It's finally happening. Our very first official podcast episode is here. We're so glad you're here with us. My name is Sheryl, host of the Sincerely Naked podcast. Today we have our very first guest. And I'm so excited to introduce him, but I also wanted to introduce the podcast to you. Here at Sincerely Naked, we're going to be talking everything on life, skincare, and everything in between. Today we have Rene, who happens to also be my fiance. And before we get into the topics that we're going to touch on, I would like for you to give a background to the audience on who you are, and then we can also speak on how we met.
Perfect. Thank you very much. It's an incredible honor to be your first guest. Thank you for thinking of me and asking me to be the inaugural guest. My name is Rene Ruiz. I'm an attorney. Um, I've been an attorney since a young age. I think I passed the bar when I was 23 years old. I love being a lawyer, love the journey that it's brought me on, love the life that it's allowed me to build. And there's a lot in between that we can talk about. But ultimately, in 2018, we met, and it's been an incredible ride since then.
Yes. So I'd love to say that the story about how we met, there's two versions, as mainly everything is in life, right? Either two or three versions. But I'll tell you, or I'll tell everyone what transpired the night that I met you. It was actually 2017, and I had just taken a final. I believe it was August. I had taken a final of one of my summer classes at and I went to Tap 42 in Coral Gables. I was there with my friend Jenny, Erica, and Ashley. We all met. It was happy hour. We were having a good time sitting at a tabletop, and there was a lot of people there, but it was a great time. At some point, I did receive a text from one of my best friends, and she said, just in the text message, she says, "Where are you?" We're at dinner, and there's someone here that I think that you would like. And my reply was, "Where are you?" I'm at Tap 42. And she says that she was at Mesa. So I tell the girls, okay, we have to leave. We're gonna go meet with my best friend. They're at dinner. So Jenny gets her car from valet. We get in the car and I put the directions to Mesa Mar.
Less than a block away.
And no, it was diagonally across the street. And she was like, "Cheryl, really?" So, anyways, we go there. But in typical fashion of my best friend and her husband, they start their night with typically having a meeting, and you were on one end of the table. Once we had gotten there, there were so many people there that we ended up being at the opposite end of the table. And we were introduced. This is Cheryl, this is Erica, girls among the girls. And that was it. We never really got to speak or anything. So I remember shortly after that being at my best friend's house and saying, okay, it happened again. We didn't even really talk that night. So then we were set up on a double date in which it was not blind for me, it was a blind date for you, but I knew you were going. And we had that double date that night, and they eventually left us alone. And I was like, "You're leaving me?" She left with her husband, and then it was just you and I. I don't think we've ever stopped talking
We
so
haven't.
much.
That's the conversation's been
Yeah.
going on since then. So I vaguely remember into you at Mesa Mar, especially at it's that I don't remember it and that you've told me and you sort of fill in the memory. But um, definitely remember the second time. So the second time I had organized a function for the people in my office. And we had just sort of opened up the Coral Gables office. So I was starting to be there more and more than I had been in my downtown office. And we had actually in an escape room. It still exists. It's there in Coral Gables, not too far away. And we had just started. Bayardo was there, and Anna was there, and my me, and he says, "I need you at Rusty Pelican in half an hour," and then he says, "And come alone." So that's code.
Ooh.
So at that point, I knew what was happening. I knew I was going to be introduced to somebody, but then I had to tell Bayardo and Anna because there was other people there. I'm like, "Listen, go," and they're like, "What do you mean you have to go? You set up this event. Like this is done for the next 2 hours." I'm like, "I'm leaving right now." So how they managed, they pulled off the rest of the event, and off I went to Rusty Pelican to go meet you.
Yeah. And it wasn't a very long night, but it was monumental in which, it set the foundation of, okay, we clicked, and then we just continued to speak from
To
there.
me, what was very significant was I didn't have any background as to who you were, right? So, but I knew obviously that our friend was connecting us. So they must have thought that there was potential for to be similar enough that we would enjoy our company. So I knew that was the case. In my friend's life, your father was very influential to him, and I had been hearing stories about your father for years and years and years, and I knew that he was a very important person in his life. So I remember later on, they had left, we finished eating dinner, and then we were at the valet. And the valet there takes forever because I mean, the cars are half a mile away. So we were there talking. I don't remember how Eddie came up, and you were like, "Oh, that's my dad." And then I was like, "Eddie's your dad." And then in my mind, instantly, I'm like, "Wait a second. If my friend has introduced me to Eddie's daughter, then this is big, right? I mean, he's introduced me to people before, and this is a very significant introduction." So I knew that they had put a lot of thought into it, and I knew that I was going to act accordingly.
And thankfully you have. So ever since that time, I mean, it's been 7 years at this point, and it doesn't even feel that way, which I think is the most important part for any relationship, to feel like kind of you just met yesterday, or that you're still in the young aspect of your relationship. And I feel that thankfully with you. So, we call my best friend the matchmaker because I think she's done a good job at matching a few people, but she's definitely done a good job here. So,
I mean, she's a very detail-oriented person, as I've always, told you that I've noticed. So, I mean, it means a lot that both her husband thought enough to put us together, and I agree. And I think that sometimes when I think back and I say, "Oh wow," like that seems it was a long time ago, but it doesn't. I mean, the years seem like they were a long time ago,
yeah.
but I still, uh, the same way when I would ask you, like, "Hey, let's go to dinner here," and we go to dinner now, I still have the same feeling. I'm excited the same way. I think that
Mm,
we are still very capable of talking for hours and hours and hours and
yeah.
seeing the night, disappear.
That's a good one. Okay, so now I want to talk about, just really quick so we don't forget this question, on skincare. On skincare for you, as someone who's dating someone who is in skincare and eats and breathes it. So, what was your skincare regimen if you had one before me? And then what is it now?
So I'd never went through a period where I broke out, like as a teenager and had like a bunch of pimples or anything like that. But I had a couple persistent ones that would always be there. I would get one on my cheek and it would come and go. But my routine, whenever that happened, and I would get upset about it, I would, go to Eckerd's or Walgreens or whatever, and
He's
whatever they
aging
sold.
himself.
Yeah, people don't
Eckerd.
remember what Eckerd's was. But I remember it had like a stick that you would rub it on the pimple and hope that it would go away. And that was and
Did it work?
not really, because it would come back. But I didn't have a routine. It was whenever something
It
happened,
was damage
I would
control.
react
It
to it
was.
and try to fix it. But those pimples gone away. I mean, ever since you gave me a routine. And in the beginning, you enforced the routine because it's not a routine I was used to doing. But I mean, my face has been great.
If someone on the street were to ask you, hey, walk me through your skincare regimen, would you be able to tell them?
Oh, absolutely.
So, what are your products?
So I don't know the names of the products, but
That's what I'm
I can tell you what
asking.
they look like. So that there's
Just like everyone else.
both in the morning and at night, wash my face. There's the pad that clean the face. Then there is creams that I put in the morning, followed by sunblock, which is I know is very important.
Very important.
And then at night, it's same routine except that two of the products change, and obviously no sunblock at night.
There you go. Okay, pretty good. Now, he doesn't know what the heck any of the products do, but
But I tell you that aside from not having pimples, I feel like I have slowed down the aging process somewhat. I feel like I
yeah.
look young. Everybody always tells me I look younger than what I am, and
And so that night at Rusty Pelican, that was September. So August was when I had the test. Then a month later was when we linked back up through that double date.
you're
And
telling your friend, "Oh, this guy, he's really good looking, except for that pimple." Like, Jesus, we
no,
gotta get
I
rid
don't
of
even remember the pimples. But I do remember sitting at Rusty Pelican and you mentioning that your birthday had just passed. I look over to you and I say, how old are you? And you say, how old do you think I am? And I gave an honest answer. I feel maybe sometimes with women, we're like, oh, let me not be rude. Let me give them a way younger number than I actually think they are. But with you, I said 35, and I said it confidently. You're 35. You said, I'm 40. And I was taken aback because I was 28 at the time. And so for me as a 28-year-old, 40 was ancient.
that. You were 27 at the time, right, or 28?
Oh, yeah. So I'm 27,
27.
about to turn 28, even more. But I remember thinking to myself, wow, 40? That's, oh, but the fact that you didn't look it was a huge thing to me in order to bridge that gap between the amount of years that we had. But let us not forget that for about the first 5 years of our relationship, I did your skincare regimen every single night
You did.
except washing your face. So you would wash your face, you
Hmm.
would shower, you would wash your face. And I was the one who the regimen has changed throughout the years, as mine has, but I would do your pad and I would do your creams and then you were
Not
good.
at all, because it was a difficult process.
Right. But because it was just a way of, I think, serving you and also knowing that it was going to get done. So, funny enough, when I have clients who either their husbands, their partners, or their children don't do it, and a lot of the times they'll say, oh, they just get lazy at night. And I tell my client, well, then just do it for them. And I don't think it's enabling. I think it's just you're taking the 2 extra seconds to do it for them because you're investing in this. And it just allows them to see the rewards. And when I told you at some point, okay, you're taking from here, you did it without a problem. And it's become part of the routine.
I feel like I look younger now than when you met me in a ways. And I
You're
always
welcome.
I always joke whenever we walk into, whenever we meet people, and you're explaining what you do, and I say, oh, you should try it. Oh, does it really work? I'm like, well, I look pretty good for 63, right?
And they're like, take me there right now. Yeah, it definitely helps. And you know, people don't realize how something so simple can not only make a difference on how other people see you, but also on how you see yourself. So when you look in the mirror and everything is smooth and even toned, you know that you're doing something. Skincare is not a luxury. It is a necessity because it is your skin. It is something that you take for the rest of your life. So why not take the best
Not
care
only
of
that, I
it?
mean, so you'll notice this as you get older. People perceive you based on how you look. And without you saying a word, people make a bunch of assumptions about you based on how you look. They make assumptions as to whether you're smart, whether you're successful, whether you're disciplined. And looking younger helps, right? Because you're extending your lifeline of how people are going to perceive you, in a more positive way. I wouldn't say you're adding years, because it's not necessarily changing your health, but you're definitely adding years to the amount of time that you're going to be perceived as useful, productive, young,
That's true.
energetic, all the other things that people associate with youth.
Yeah. Speaking on that, let's talk about a workout routine. How important or how has your workout routine evolved, right? So you are 47 now, turning 48 this year, not to remind you.
You have
But
about 6 months of shopping time left.
of what?
Shopping time left
What do you
for whatever
mean?
my gift is going to be.
Oh, yes, not to remind me. But so I do know that that evolves with time. How has that evolved for you? Because I think that it's important for men and women to not only, get into a workout routine young, but if they don't have a solid one, you can start one at any time. And so just speak on how it's evolved for you and what you're doing now.
So I've always enjoyed working out. It's always been part of my life. I've always tried to eat well. Obviously, life happens, and you go through periods of time where you're either investing in other things. When I was a young attorney, I mean, basically working 20 hours a day for 2 or 3 years at a time. So being able to work out sort of goes to the back burner. And in your mind, you still think of yourself as, you're in peak shape. But then you're like, wait a second, but I haven't worked out in 3 years, or I haven't worked out in 4 years. So to me, it's always been important. There have been things in my life that have shifted priorities for a period of time, but I feel now it's a significant, and it has been for a period of time. Again, another thing that makes you feel young, allows you to move the way that you moved when you were young, which, I mean, I feel like I'm 20 years old. Like, I feel like go run a mile right now. We could do 100 push-ups. We could do whatever, that's important in how you carry yourself, the confidence you have, how you're perceived by others. So, I mean, all of it's really important. I think in a relationship, it's important too, because I think that even though it goes unsaid, I don't think that anybody will ever say, hey, I don't like the way you look. But it's important. The more you invest in the way that you look, obviously you're doing it for yourself, but that doesn't go unnoticed, right? Your
Yeah.
partner looks at it and says, wow, like, look at the effort this person is, undertaking for me to benefit from this, right? So I got to step it up. I've got to have the same thing. I have to show the same sort of respect, not only for myself, but for my
Yeah.
partner back.
And I have noticed when we got into working out together, maybe about maybe 2 years ago when you and I started going to Sweat for 40 together. But even before that, we started going to Body and Soul. And when you started going early, I said, hold on, maybe I should go early too. And if I didn't go, but you went, I would feel guilty. I would guilt myself saying, why didn't I just go?
But look at you now. Like now, the morning workout is what you do, which in your the life that you lead, it's really the only time that you know the dedicated period of time to work out. So the same thing with, even though I'm not working out that early anymore, again, because of life, I think that instilled the routine in
Yeah,
you, and you have continued it and obviously taken it to the next level. And so that wasn't, even though you may look back and say those workouts are nothing compared to what you're doing now, but I
right.
think it was a very important step
In
along the way.
establishing
Right.
that routine. And, a lot of people will say, oh, but I'm not an early person. It's impossible for me to wake up. But all you have to do are the reps with anything in life. You wake up early one day, and yeah, it's gonna suck, and it doesn't always feel good every time I wake up at 5:20 in the morning, but you just do it.
The body adjusts to
Yeah.
anything. Whatever
And then
whatever you
now,
as the routine, your body will deal with it.
right. If Fridays I don't usually go to the gym, I will still wake up at 5:20 even though my alarm is for 6 or whatever time it is, and it's because that's it. The biological clock has reset, and so it is possible to change that. So even if people think, "Oh, but I'm not an early bird," I truly benefit from an early morning workout because you get it done. You have all of that dopamine and those good hormones to carry you through the day, including the energy. And it also gives you about 2 hours of time. So for me, at least between 5:30 and 7:30, no one is texting me. Nothing is happening. So you don't have any interruptions. By the time 7:30 comes around, that's it. The text messages come
Mhm.
in, the emails come in, and your day has already
Once the
started.
day starts, you don't have control of it
Yeah,
anymore. And
right.
in my work as well. That's why I like starting work really early because I get stuff off the list. Once 8 o'clock, 8:30 runs around, things are being added to the list. Your ability to cross things off the list is no longer there.
And also, I think your energy and your mental clarity is affected at that point too, right? You're maybe not as sharp as the day goes on. So let's talk about, what would you say is the greatest thing that you have learned in being in a relationship with me? And I don't mean that from like a conceited standpoint because I have something that I want to tell you. But before I tell you mine, what would you say is the greatest thing that you've
So
learned?
that is an answer that has evolved over time. And if you had asked me maybe 3 years ago, I would not have given you this answer. It's taken me that long to sort of figure that out. As you know, I have great parents. They instilled in me a lot of discipline, a lot of routine, a lot of value for hard work. So to me, my perspective has always been you work really hard and you derive your enjoyment from that, right? And if you are doing things like going on vacation or doing other too much of those other things, you start feeling bad about it because you're not working. And I think that I have shifted because of you. Like you have an incredible perspective on life, right? And I think that my perspective has shifted as to why we're here, what we're supposed to do while we're here. And obviously, work is very important and being able to provide is very important. But at the end of the day, it's what did we do with the blessings that we have? Like, we have certain skills, we're able to make money. What do we do with that? At the end of the day, once we're gone, nobody's going to care how much is in a bank account. We've enjoyed each other in many different settings. So definitely your perspective, you had a childhood that I didn't have. And I think that that gave you the opportunity that I didn't have to develop a perspective of gratitude and to just be happy for the fact that I'm here, I'm alive, I have the ability to enjoy life. I expected everything to turn out a certain way. And if it didn't, the smallest thing would just upset me for the rest of the day, or the smallest little thing would upset me for a week. My job is a confrontational job, right? My job is to argue with people and convince them that I'm right and they're wrong and my client is correct. And, so I don't avoid confrontation. I like it to a certain extent, but that's a job, right? Life doesn't have to be confrontational. Like if somebody cuts you off on the road, you don't have to engage that person. And now through a more enlightened perspective, right? I'll smile. Look, let's pray for this person. Like this person, obviously needs prayer. I definitely, I'm a different person, and I view life differently, and that's 100% because of the perspective that you've been able to get me to grasp.
Yeah, and I'd say that you definitely grew up with routine and certainty, right? You knew that you were going to have X on the table and I didn't grow up poor, but I just feel that both of my parents were very spontaneous and I didn't understand at that time. I can look back and look at pictures and say, wow, that was our house. It's very different from even the first home that I purchased. But, I thrive on spontaneity and just being a little bit more, I would say, relaxed in whatever happens around me. Of course, there are things that can get you anxious or riled up. But for the most part, I am that person that you are now in just letting things roll off your shoulder because my gosh, there's so many bigger things to worry about or to stress
And
about
so
that I
much that
don't.
you can't control, right? If you're going to get upset about
Exactly.
things that you can't control, you're going to be upset all the
Right.
time, right? And I think that we were both on opposite ends of that spectrum. And I think that even though we're not exactly the same, I have pulled you closer to the
Yeah.
way I am because I
Yeah.
think that I have given you a level of security and certainty and things that you'd never had in
For
your
sure.
life.
Yeah.
And you've given me things that I never had in my life. So I think that we've pulled each other into a proximity of each other that works very well.
Yeah. So, in regards to speaking of what the routines are that you grew up with, I do want to speak about something that, especially my generation, so those in their 30s, mid 30s, are experiencing in checking off the boxes of life, right? So they grew up and they're in their 20s or mid 20s and they think, okay, well, I want to be married by 30 so I can have my kid by 32 and I'll have my second one by 34. Actually, those numbers are way older than what people are actually talking about now. And so I do know a lot of people that checked off those boxes and those boxes didn't work out for them.
Hmm.
So I'll speak on myself. I'm 35. We're engaged. We've been engaged for 2 years and we don't have kids. And it's just something that comes up in the treatment room where my clients will innocently ask, one, when is the wedding happening? And two, when are you having kids? The wedding question doesn't bother me. I think we're in such a good place that it's something that I specifically haven't pushed for because I think we're just so good and starting the business and moving into this beautiful office. There's a lot of things, and I finally feel relaxed enough that I feel everything has kind of calmed down. So, of course, I started a podcast. And we can speak on that and plan that for the near future. But in regards to the baby question, my clients will ask me, when are you having a baby? And I say, I don't know, whenever God decides. I'm not in a rush. I feel very comfortable with where I am and my body. And they'll say, oh, well, Cheryl, your clock is ticking.
Which is different now. I think medicine is to the
Of
point where I've
course.
had plenty of friends who've had kids in their 40s and.
Right. And I'll say, okay, that's also, yes, a very old mindset. But I truly believe that God has a plan. And should He bless us with a child, the baby will be however He wants the baby to be, perfect, and it'll happen in perfect timing. So I want you to speak on your journey and what boxes you checked off and how that transitioned and how it looks in your life
You've
now.
said a lot there, right? So let me try to organize my thoughts. Kids, I've been blessed. We've been blessed with an incredible son. He's absolutely tremendous. It's the most life changing and rewarding thing that has happened in my life. I think it's a beautiful process. You're never ready for it.
Right.
You can't plan it. I guess you can plan it, but you're mentally not planned for
Yeah.
it. If and when we have a child, you'll see it'll be
Mhm.
completely life changing. And at the end of the day, I mean, I assume because people have told me when you are on your way out, when you're old, when you know that there's a lot more days behind you than they are in front of you, that's what matters is who you put into this world that will remember you, that will take your values and carry on. Parenthood is an absolutely amazing thing. I was blessed with two unbelievable parents, and I had a hell of a time raising my son, and would love to do that again. But fully endorse parenthood. It's fantastic. Now, checking the boxes. That's an interesting question. So I don't know if this is a common experience, or I don't know if it's because of our particular circumstances. Both my parents, came here fleeing communism at a very young age and rebuild or build a life in this country. So they both worked hard. They were both completely sacrificed to raising the family. They were both, to this day, they sacrifice for myself before them. Like before they buy themselves a car, they bought us cars. Even at times when money may not have been plentiful. I always grew up thinking I was the richest person on earth. Like there was a need for anything. And then now you find out what they had to do to make that happen. So, I mean, even more respect and appreciation for the childhood that I had. But in that existence, there are certain assumptions, right? You are going to school to finish as quickly as possible. You're not there to experience life. Like, school costs money, you get a scholarship, and you go out as quickly as possible to start making money and being productive. So I flew by school. I, did undergrad in 2 years. I did law school in 3 years. I was a practicing attorney at 23. I don't regret it. I love it. I loved my career. I don't know that I necessarily recommend that. I think that, college people learn a lot about themselves. And, I stayed in my parents' house living until the day that I got married. I have a great relationship with my parents. I loved it. I don't regret it. But it was the same thing. Like, why am I going to go move away or move somewhere else when I can stay here and save money? My job is to save money and be as productive as I can. And the same thing with getting married. You find somebody that checks the boxes of certain values and certain whatever, and that's it. Like, whether it works or not, you move forward and you get married, right? That one I do regret, except for my son. But that was a decision that, I tell him all the time now, like, you better know a lot of people, and you better know the person before you are equipped to make that decision.
Right.
As you know, I talk a lot in high schools. I love, sharing with younger people. And this year you didn't go to this one, but I started it differently. And I asked the room, I said, when, especially for men, because I think that this happens to men a lot more than women. When you meet somebody, what's the first question somebody asks a man? Always. And everybody in the room got it. Like, what do you do? Okay, because men are valued by what they do, right? And we have certain assumptions. Like, if you are an executive at a company, that means that we're going to give you more respect than if you're a landscaper, right? And if you are, all these assumptions, which are completely BS, right? Because there's many who I admire who are landscapers, including ours, by the way, is very good.
Yeah.
So they ask you, what do you do, right? And there's this pressure for a man to try to, sacrifice time with a family, to put it invested into a job so that you can become whatever it is, that is your highest and best. And I said, well, I've never been asked. Not a single person has ever asked me, are you happy?
Hmm.
Right? Nobody's ever said, hey, nice to meet you, Rene. Are you happy? Nobody's ever asked me that, right? So it's not something that, especially for a man, is even an option, right? So you make decisions based on things other than happiness. And I have a ton of friends, especially attorneys. I think attorneys are, for the most part, pretty miserable people. Like, I can count in one hand the attorneys that I know who I can say they're completely fulfilled and they're happy and they're.
And why do you think that they're not
Because
happy?
I think it's very easy. You go through law school, right? And everything's competition, and you're ranked and you're this and you got to get a score. Depending on where you're ranked, that depends on what type of job you get, whether you can work for a judge, whether somebody from the top 10 law firms want to hire you. So, you become obsessed with this notion of, like, I need to work for this firm or I need to work for that firm. And it's just so that you can say that you work for that firm. And of course, they pay more. So you find yourself in this firm and you say, well, I'm working all the time. I may not like it, but hell, I mean, I'm getting paid X. Like, I remember I was an intern my second year of law school, and this was in 1999. They were paying $2,000 a week for a kid that didn't know anything, just to hang around. And I mean, it's like, shit, I'll do whatever. $2,000 a week, I'll do whatever you want. And little by little, you find out that the life that you enjoyed, the things that you enjoyed, are being boxed out because there's no time for that anymore. And then you work really hard, and then you decide, well, they put, if you work 2,400 hours, you get an extra X thousands of dollars. So I'm going to do that. And if you
Right.
do this, I'm going to do that. And then I think a lot of people make decisions based on that. And then 10 years later, they find themselves on a road and they look back and they're like, I'm not happy. Life sucks. Wife left you because you worked too hard. Your children don't know you. And when they're old enough, they're going to tell you, you were never at my game. I never saw you. It doesn't matter that you bought them a nice car. People put, their focus on something that may not be the most important thing. I told this story. I may have told you, but it's one that always sticks out in my head. I remember I was working at a firm that I ended up accepting their offer after law school. So this was the first firm that I worked at. I worked there 10 years. Great relationships. I've always fortunate that I like what I do. But I remember that first summer, it was every day, Saturday included. We're there every day. And I remember I have this really good friend of mine who we would hang out every day. And every day he was the ringleader. So he would find out who we're meeting at the beach, what club are we going to, and every day he had the agenda.
Yeah, the agenda.
So this summer hits, and in his mind, it's like every other summer. So he'd call me up, hey, Rene, today we're going to the beach, and we're going here, and we're going with these girls, and we're doing this. And I'd tell him, I can't. I have to work. Okay, don't worry. I'll call you tomorrow. And then the next day he calls, and it's the same thing. And it's the next day he called, and he was very persistent. To this day, he's very persistent. So he kept calling, like, hey, we're going to do this. I remember when I got upset and I'm sitting in my office. He's calling me like at 8:30 in the morning. I'm already there. Back then you had to wear a suit. So I'm there in my dark suit with my tie and it's 100 degrees outside. And I remember that I got upset at him. I said, listen, you don't get it. Every day that you call me, I'm going to be here working. Like I'm never going to be able to go to the beach with you again at 9:30. That's
How sad.
never going to happen. And I hung up the phone. He's like, oh, okay, well, we'll hang out when we hang out. Bye. I hang up the phone. And I remember that I started typing and I look down and I feel this big tear coming down my eye and I feel it roll down my nose and it's like hanging there and it falls onto the tie. And I look at the little tear like sort of expand on the tie. And I said to myself, like, why am I crying? And I said, well, because it hit me. It's like your life has changed. Like the life you enjoyed, the things that you liked, that's done. That's behind you. It's never going to happen again. And it's never happened again. Like I have never again gone to hang out at a beach at 9:30. In fact, I think that I would say maybe the last 5 or 6 or 7 years, I have great clients and I'm blessed to, have a team. So I do have control of time. I get to decide how I spend my time, and I've never missed a practice. I've never missed a game for Rene. So I have that now. But I want to say from that day I had that conversation with my friend until 7, 8 years ago, I had to have a watch on at all times because your day is measured by point 0.6 every 6 minutes, point 0.1 every 6 minutes. You have to account for it. At the end of the day, somebody's paying for your time, and you have to say, well, I did this research for this client, and it took me 1.3 hours. So you're constantly looking at your clock and constantly writing it down. So at the end of the day, you can figure out who's going to pay for your day so that you can justify what they're paying you at the law firm. I used to remember saying it's been 12 years since I didn't have a watch in my hand, even on vacation. I was very fortunate that I loved what I did. Not that I knew what I wanted to do. I mean, I went into law school thinking I wanted to do wills and trusts, that sort of stuff. And I ended up doing labor law and dealing with labor unions, and I love that. I didn't really have a clue what I wanted to do other than I knew I wanted to be a lawyer. But I think I've always, and again, my parents put me in that position. I've always been able to make decisions based on what I think is going to make me happy, understanding that sacrifices had to be made in order for me to have the life that we have now. I had to bust my ass when I was really young.
Yeah.
There were many, many years. I remember on a Friday, maybe you would go to TGI Fridays for an hour. And I was like, wow, this is great.
Yeah. At what point did you know that you wanted to be an attorney?
Say I was maybe 7 or 8 years old. And my dad one day randomly asked me, said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I thought about, as you know, I'm a huge Dodger fan and a huge baseball fan. And at that age, I told him I'm going to own the Los Angeles Dodgers. Instead of saying I want to be a baseball player, or I want, whatever, I'm going to be a fireman, I want an astronaut, what kids
own the team.
I'm going to own the team. And he didn't look at me and say, oh, what does this say? Like, why don't you come up with something more practical or more, more possible? He looked at me, he's like, okay, well, in life, you're going to learn that mistakes are very costly, and every mistake you make is going to set you back. So if you want to do something like that, which is going to require a lot of money, you not only have to be dedicated to minimizing your mistakes, you're going to have to be open to learning from other people's mistakes. And he's like, a lot of people don't do that. So you've got to, and I remember that I was like, okay, well, that always stuck with me. So as I grew older and I learned about the history of the Dodgers, and I found, at the time, the owner was a guy named Peter O'Malley, and his dad owned the team before him, Walter O'Malley. And I said, well, how did Walter O'Malley get to buy the Brooklyn Dodgers? He was their attorney, and he little by little kept acquiring equity in the team. Whenever the owner needed money, he was there. Over a period of time, he became the owner of the team. And I said, well, I'm going to be a lawyer. This is fantastic. That's how that's how I will, I'll do whatever it is he did. I don't know the age, but I mean, I knew I wanted to be a lawyer. And then I remember a second conversation with my mom when I was maybe like in 9th grade. She was like, what do you want to be? You got to start thinking about that. So I told her, I said, get me a list of the highest paying professions. So I don't know how she researched it pre-internet, but she came back and gave me a list. And I remember at the time, commercial airline pilot was number 1. I want to say maybe plastic surgeon was number 2, and number 3, attorney. And I'm like, I'm not going to fly a plane. I'm like, I can't see blood.
Definitely not.
So attorney it is.
Okay. So that kind of stamped it in for you. And that's funny because, you do speak to younger kids, and we were with some family members recently, and there was a girl who's 18, and she thought she wanted to be an attorney, so she's going to go into law school, but then she wanted to speak to me because maybe she wanted to go into healthcare. But anytime that anyone comes to ask me, and it's typically nurses or people going into pre-nursing and have that idea of going into healthcare, is how do I know what I want to do? And the advice that I give, and I want to hear what you would say, is to start with the end in mind. Where do you see yourself in 10 years? And at 18 years old, it's so hard to envision that, right? Because you're a child. And as much as you know nothing. So if you can kind of have an idea of what you want your life to look like in 10 years from now, and that goes with anyone at any age, not just at 18, then you can start there, start with the end in mind, and work your way backwards. So, exactly what you did. You started with the end in mind. The end game is to own the Los Angeles Dodgers. How do I get there? How does someone get there, period? So, you said it was Peter O'Malley?
His dad,
His
Walter
dad.
O'Malley, but
Okay,
yes.
Walter. So, then you find out their steps. And I think that is also a beautiful thing, too. Not a lot of people, one, even learn from their own mistakes, and two, not a lot of people have the wisdom to learn from others' mistakes. And that has been a huge benefit for me in my life because, of course, I lost both of my parents by the time I was 16. And so those are typically the people that you're learning life lessons from, either directly or indirectly. They're giving you this constant wisdom and life advice that I no longer had access to. So every single person around me, whether it was my sisters, my best friends, their parents, I learned from them. I didn't know it at the time, but I knew, and I can think of it now looking back, seeing how their life turned out or in the trajectory in which their life was going. And I could say, okay, well, I don't want that to be my life. Not that it was bad, but it's just not what I wanted for me. So let me take this route. Something as simple as both of my sisters were teenage moms. I knew I didn't want that for me because I saw the struggles that they went with. And maybe that's a part of maybe why it's taken me so long to do it for myself, knowing that I want to have a really good backbone, good foundation in life and just as a family in order to, take that step. Do feel that thankfully we're there now. But what would you say to not even just an 18-year-old, but anyone at any point in their life where they're trying to think, what is my next move? How do I try to decide what is best for me in regards to what path they want to take?
I think you said it beautifully, which is exactly the way that I say it. This isn't a board game where you take the next step, right? And I think that if your life is based on decisions that you're making right in front of you, you're going to end up where you don't want to be, right? Because sometimes life doesn't take you in a straight line. In order to get to where you want to go, you got to take a step backwards. And you may have people telling you, like, hey, that was dumb. Why did you do that? Why didn't you take this job that offered you $10,000 more? Well, because that's taking you down a path. So I always tell everybody when you're young, life is very exciting because everything is possible. But
Mhm.
as you make decisions, you're closing doors, right? If you go to law school, you can't be a dentist.
Right.
So the dentist door closed. You're now a lawyer. So now what type of lawyer are you going to be? So you went down a path. It's like the tree behind you with all these branches. Like you going down one branch forecloses the other branches. So you can't be making decisions based on what's right in front of you. You'll find that you're down a branch that you didn't want to go down, right? And then you're too far down that branch to do something about it. Like if you're a lawyer for 10 years and you decide you want to be a dentist, you can do it, but that's not the smartest
Now you've
path.
also lost time,
And
which you
money
can't get
and
back.
all sorts of things, right? So I always say you look at what you want to be, not necessarily what you want to be, but what you want your life to be, which was another great piece of advice that our friend told me, which is you're the creator of your own life. And in this country, the best country in the world, you get to decide exactly what your life looks like, every part of it. And if you find yourself that there's parts of your day that you're doing things that you like, and there's parts of your day that you're doing things that you don't like, that's on you. Get rid of the things that you don't like. Don't do things because people expect you to do it or because somebody guilted you into doing it. Or, every moment of your life should be doing something that you enjoy. So you look 10, 15 years down the road and you envision, what would I like to be doing? Whatever that is. And it might not be your job, right? But I want to be watching a baseball game. So that's your passion. Figure out a way. If you're not a good baseball player, there's a million jobs that you could have that are involved in baseball, right?
Or even just a job that offers you flexibility enough to decide, well,
Right.
today on a Tuesday at 3 p.m., I'm going to go watch a baseball game.
Exactly right. I think that's the way to do it is you have to look backwards. And if you look backwards, I'll never forget Peter, dear friend of mine, who we work together now. We were both young attorneys. We went to law school together, went to high school together, but we were both young attorneys at different firms at the time. and we were having lunch, and we found out that Major League Baseball was having their winter meetings, which is this annual meeting where all the general managers get together and they sign free agents and they talk. And it's a place where people show up to interview and to pass out resumes and to hopefully get a job in baseball. And we were having lunch, and we had heard on the radio that the winter meetings were happening at the Ritz-Carlton in Key Biscayne. And Peter said, let's go. And I'm like, let's go. He's like, yeah, let's print out. We'll go. We'll hand it. We did well in school. We're smart people. We'll get a job. We're like, okay, let's finish eating and we'll go do that. And by the time we finished eating, we talked ourselves out of it. We were like, wait a second. We have families. We have obligations. What happens if they offer us a job and it's a volunteer job and it doesn't pay? How the hell are we going to go home, tell wives and parents and like, hey, you guys have to support us because I decided to take a job that doesn't pay. And then we'll let you, and then you don't get a promotion, and you wasted 3 years of your life, and by the time we were done, we were like, that's the stupidest thing we ever thought of. Like, why would we do that? But in time, we found out that there were two people, Mark Shapiro and John Daniels, both our age, who did that. And they both went and became interns, one with the Texas Rangers and one with the Cleveland Indians.
So they weren't making any money.
No, they volunteered for 2 or 3 years. And by the time that they were, I think one at 36 and the other one at 38 were general managers of their teams, vice presidents and general managers making millions of dollars, doing what would be a dream job for me, like running a baseball team. They did it. They took the risk. So I don't regret it. I've always been very passionate about living in Miami. So I would not want to go live in Cleveland or anywhere else, not even Los Angeles.
No.
And that was a fork in the road where somebody took a risk, took a step backwards, right? Because those people, obviously went to the best law schools also and did great and had to sacrifice in order, to achieve their dream. I think the first answer is happiness, right? I think that
your happiness.
Your
happiness is different from
everybody defines success completely differently. And I've got a story that I'll share, another one that a client told me once. To completely answer the question, I think the other part is you have to be open to God's plan for you. You have to believe in something that is sort of controlling destiny greater than us. I mean, if we are it, then it's very sad for the world. I've always been confident that God has a plan, and that plan, doesn't mean there won't be challenges. Right. We're here to be tested, I believe, in a number of different ways. I think the two greatest relationships that I have from a business standpoint that have become personal relationships both happened in situations that I didn't want to happen. I fought against them happening. I was told to go places where I didn't want to go, where I fought very hard. I thought about quitting. I went to them, and one of them was meeting with what has become my best client, an international client that has treated me like family and has been great. The other one was the friend who introduced us, wonderful relationship professionally and personally. And I met him in a similar situation. I had to take a trip to New York, didn't want to go, fought very hard to make sure I didn't go. And that's where we met and we became friends. And if I had not gone on that trip, you and I would have never met. So obviously you have to believe in a plan, right? So that there's a destiny out there for you. I think my life, the way that it has had to unfold for me to meet you, right? Because if my life unfolds in a different way, if I don't get married when I got married, I would have gotten married at some other point, right? Had to be so that I would be single on the day we met, right? Things that you say, well, that was an unpleasant, was a challenge, or that was whatever, but it was all part of a plan that got you to where you needed to be so that you can unfold, this chapter of happiness.
In a marriage in which you can learn so much from what was good or what was bad and pour that into whatever relationship that you're going into next. So it's not necessarily that, because you got divorced, it's something so ugly. I mean, more than I think 50% are ending in divorce. So actually they say that your second marriage is the best, not for nothing. Not that I encourage that.
I think life is funny that way, right? You don't gain a perspective until you have had the not so pleasant side of something, right? So you don't understand how valuable a great partner is unless you have experienced one that is not so great. Perhaps if I had met you first, we would have gotten along and life would have been great, but it wouldn't have been as great because I would have taken it for granted. In the back of my mind, I would have assumed all women are like this. So, but that's not the case, right? Like, you can't experience love until you're heartbroken. You can't experience life until you've seen people in your life no longer exist. These are the things, as unfortunate as they are, that give you the ability on the spectrum of feelings, right? We're here on this planet to experience an entire array of things, and you can't experience the very best things until you've experienced the worst things.
But I also don't want to minimize that that is not always the case for everyone when they experience something that is unpleasant or that it didn't work out the way they wanted, because then they could go on to the next thing, whether that be the next relationship or the next job, and continue those bad
Mm.
habits and have the same exact outcome. And then they think that it's everyone around them, but it's actually them not learning from their experiences that they had at whatever job or relationship that they had. So I think it's important for everyone to know that yes, things are unpleasant, but they can be pleasant if you learn from them intentionally.
And I think something else that you taught me is just let them go. I can be a very resentful person where I just hold on to stuff. And even though I think it doesn't, nobody sees it, like, but it affects the way I act and it affects people around me. But I can sit there and be like, this was wrong. This person acted wrong. And it bothers me. And I can't believe they did that. And I mean, all of that is just negativity that is bringing you, right? It's like an anchor. You just let go of it and,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, that's their
Mm-hmm.
problem. Move on and be happy and be grateful to learn from it and to become wiser and to make better choices the next time.
And forgiveness, right? Because everyone's been
Mm.
wronged, whether that be indirectly or directly. So something as simple as being cut off, just let it go. I like to say that person didn't even see me. They didn't even see me. Give them the benefit of the doubt. Something, and I don't know where I got this from, which I feel that that's a lot of my personality, where I don't know who implanted it or whatnot. But even as something as simple as knowing that the young people, I don't know how old they were because we don't know the exact details, but we should find them out soon. Is that the people who crashed into my mom and my stepdad that caused their death, they immediately died. But had they been alive, and still, even though they're passed, I forgive them. They're not here to ask me for forgiveness. None of their family members are wanting even, or whatever, it doesn't matter. I immediately forgave them because it's not that they did it on purpose. Even if they did do it on purpose, who knows? But what good would it have done for me at 12 years old to
Mm.
hate them for what they did and that they took my mom away from me? It wouldn't have done anything. It wouldn't have served me. So, not just something as severe as that, right? Because that's
No, but
very
it's a very
traumatic.
shocking and severe thing that you had to go through, your dad too, at a young age. But without that, you don't have this perspective.
Yeah,
Just because you went through it doesn't mean you end up with that perspective. Today, we were
correct.
talking to your
Yeah.
sister and it was like, the type of reaction that I'd be prone to give, which is it's a good thing they died or else I would have done something.
Well, she didn't say that, but
No, but that would have been my react. But it's like trying to punish somebody by poisoning yourself. You're not punishing them. You're
yeah,
punishing yourself.
yeah, that goes with anything that you hold on to. I realized that I didn't answer my own question when I asked you, what have you learned from me? And I want to tell you the greatest thing that I feel, at least right now in my mind, because I'm sure I can name about 50 plus things, but the greatest thing that I learned from you and being so close to you in our relationship is that looking forward to things really is the secret to life. Because if you have something to look forward to, and I didn't, even when you first told me this, I didn't really comprehend or grasp the full idea of it. But you would say like, "Oh, I'm so excited to go to next week. We're gonna go to ta ta ta," and I'd be like, "Oh, but that's next week." Yeah, but you would say it's good to look forward to. If you always have something good to look forward to, then it gives you like the spice of life, I feel, and not taken away from enjoying the present, right? Because people can get lost in the future and thinking about what's gonna happen next, but enjoying the present and then knowing, wow, life is so good and yet it's still going to get better. There's still so many things to look forward to. So in my field, not aesthetics, but nursing, healthcare, in patients who have chronic kidney disease, who are undergoing dialysis, or even, get their first diagnosis, if you don't instill hope in them, or if they don't have hope to begin with, they actually don't last as long and they pass away sooner because they give up that hope. Or if they're undergoing treatment for so long and they believe that it's not working or their quality of life isn't very good, the moment that they lose hope, they soon thereafter will pass away. And so just goes to show you how hope is such a life giver. Because if you have hope, you can know that there is, like in your future, there is good. There's something to look forward to.
So that lesson I got from my grandfather, who was always looking forward to something. Every time I talked to him, it was like, "Oh, we're gonna go to a baseball game next week, and then on Sunday we're gonna go eat dinner, and then it's Easter, and then we're gonna go to the beach." And then he was constantly always looking forward to something. And he would tell me, that's more important than the thing itself. Like, you look
Right.
forward to Christmas, and on Christmas morning, it's over. Like,
And
you
it
open your
goes
gifts, that's
quick.
it. It's like, oh, we'll put this away. But what a beautiful thing if you looked forward to Christmas, 30 days in a row. Christmas lasted 30 days. And it's not like only look forward to big things. I mean, I look forward to getting in bed. I look forward to waking up in the morning. I look forward to going to dinner. I look forward to, on Saturday we made reservation, whatever. We made reservations. We're going to go do this, or planning trips. But the beauty of it is that everything is something to be grateful for. How many people who have lived in the history of the world could have said that they were confident that every day was going to be better than the day before? Right? And I think that for the most part, we're all in that boat. I mean, that's pretty incredible. I mean, there were people who, lived in ancient Egypt and were slaves, and there were people who, had to go to war. I mean, there's all sorts of different things that have had to happen throughout the history of the world for us to be in a country like this, in a time like this. We really have a lot to be grateful for. I can tell you the story my client told me. I used to do a lot of work for the Miami Herald. They had an executive there named Alva Chapman, who at the time was very, very old. I think he's passed away since then. Probably like 90. He's got a street named him in downtown. Legend in the newspaper industry in the city and for the Miami Herald. And I remember one time there was some sort of case, and I had to go to the old Miami Herald building, the beautiful building that they had right by the water that doesn't exist anymore. And I remember that he saw me and, very diligent, showing up on time, and he would try to engage in like small talk. And I just, I'm here to interview so-and-so. I want to do my job. And I remember that we went to grab coffee, and he was very laid back. And he told me, he tells me, he's like, I want to tell you a story about this island. And I didn't know where he was going with it. But so he tells me, he's like, so this American, this hardworking American guy goes and finally takes a vacation, and he goes to this island. And he's sitting on the beach, and he's there with his, at the time, I guess it was a pager. He's there with his pager, making sure nobody calls him. And he sees this guy who's carved a canoe, this island person who's carved a canoe. And he sees, every morning the guy goes out on his canoe. He's not even fishing. He just goes out, he enjoys the sun, and he comes back. So on the third day, he walks up to the guy and he's like, this is incredible. You've carved this beautiful canoe. You know what you need to do? He's like, what do I need to do? He's like, you need to rent this canoe. He's like, could you imagine people like me who come here with a lot of money and we're looking for things to do in this resort? If you would rent this canoe, eventually you would make enough money that you would be able to carve 10 more canoes. And then the guy's like, and what would I do if I carved 10 more canoes? He's like, you'd rent more of them. He's like, could you imagine if you were renting 10 canoes all day long to people like me? You'd have so much money. And he's like, and what would I do with the money? He's like, you'd go to the north end of the beach and you would put up another canoe stand and you would start making money and you would have 10 canoes. And then you would take over this entire island. Your canoe stands would be everywhere and everybody would be paying for your canoes. And he's like, and what do I do then? He's like, well, you work for 30, 40 years running your canoe company, and then you retire. And what would I do when I retire? And he's like, well, then you would have time to come here and just do nothing. He's like, but that's what I do now. Like, why would I do all of these things?
Yeah.
And I think that was Alva Chapman's way of telling me, don't be in such a rush. Enjoy the moment, enjoy the day. Don't, wake up one day 60 years from now and say like, wow, I should have done
And
this
as
and
we
I should have
know,
done that.
you don't know that you have 60 years.
That's right.
Your day could be tomorrow, your day could be next year. You really don't know.
Hopefully 60 years, because that would make me like over 100. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah. So to end this, I want to ask you a question. Who is someone, because I do know that there are a lot of people that you know that have made an impact on your life, and even little stories like that, which I'm sure happened many, many years ago, that you still remember and carry with you and you can apply to life. But who is someone that you don't know personally who has influenced your life in a positive way?
I've thought about this question a different way, which is who would I like to have dinner with, right? Who would I like to,
Okay, that's a good one.
my first answer would be Jesus. Obviously, that would be an incredible person to have dinner with. But assuming not Jesus, I'd love to meet Abraham Lincoln. I'd love to meet George Washington. I'd love to meet Ronald Reagan. But being a baseball fan, I think Jackie Robinson would be somebody that I'd love to sit down and talk to. Just an amazing life that he lived. Also somebody who died very, very young. But just what he overcame. And he overcame not because of color, but because they gave him an opportunity. Like, it wasn't like they gave him the opportunity because he was black. He was so good, he found a way to make it in spite of the fact that he was, many people had tried up to that point but couldn't achieve. So I think just a spectacular person.
So would you say that that's the person who's
I think so, because
you haven't met, who's influenced
I think that would
you in a
allow me to
positive
tie
way?
in not only my admiration for him and my desire to learn from him things that could be applied to any field of your life. He also had a very successful marriage. He had a great family, like a lot of things that could be learned from him, but also would allow me to talk about baseball and his teammates and what happened.
And it's incredible. His wife is still alive.
She's
How old
still
is she?
alive. I got to meet her. I met her in 1997.
Oh, wow.
And she and
18
I've
years
met Roy
ago.
Campanella's wife, who has since passed.
But
Another,
how old is Robinson's wife?
I believe she's like 101 or
Yeah.
102. Spectacular.
I actually didn't believe you. So the
Yeah.
other day I did look it up, and she
She
actually
looks
is
spectacular.
101 years old.
Yep.
It's incredible.
The nicest person. She signed a photo for me. I mean, just I met her in Vero
What was the
Beach. I
photo
think
of?
it was a photo of her husband.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe it was a photo of her.
No. So I don't think I did with her, but I met Roy Campanella's wife, Roxy Campanella, the same day, and I did take a picture with her. I don't remember if maybe I didn't have Rachel Robinson's address, but somehow I got Roxy Campanella's address. I sent it to her, and she sent it back to me signed.
Very cool. Which you love to do.
Yes.
All right. Thank you for coming on my podcast. Is there anything else you want to say?
I just said I'm extremely proud of you, what you've done, the growth that I've seen you. Like I tell you, the woman that I met 7 years ago is not the woman that you are now.
Thankfully.
No, I mean, you have built an incredible life. You've helped me build an incredibly nice, family that we have, a wonderful home. I mean, we're here in your business, which is incredible. So extremely proud, and can't wait to see 7 years from now what it is that you're doing.
Thank you. Love you.
Love you too.
All right. Bye.